From our early American history classes as youngsters, we learned that the early colonists left England to come to America in order to have freedom of religion. Well, freedom of religion in the First Amendment establishes that we can go to any church we want, any synagogue we want, any mosque we want. And the government cannot mandate a national religion or national church and make us practice that particular religion.
The IRS cautions churches on politicking in run-up to the elections. As the presidential elections loom ahead, the Internal Revenue Service has taken steps to issue a stern reminder to all churches not to get involved in influencing their congregations, either towards nor against any political party or candidate running for presidency or any other political office. The law prohibits any church or religious organization from either endorsing or opposing any candidate running for public office. This is according to the principles of the separation of church and state. One of the occasions that the IRS has made its concerns known was at the event organized by the Conference of National Black Churches and the Congressional Black Caucus. That event was held on May 30th, 2012.
The second part of the First Amendment is freedom of speech. That means literally that we can speak our mind against the government. And the government cannot make laws that prevent us from criticizing the government or our leaders. Frankly, we can say what we want about our government, whether they're doing a good job or a bad job, without fear of any laws preventing us or anything restricting our speech.
Well, it's a bill that has received very little attention but may make free speech a felony and seriously restrict your right to political protest. Just signed into law by the president, H.R. 347 gives federal agents sweeping powers to arrest and bring felony charges against citizens engaged in protests where the Secret Service is present. Joining us now with more, Fox News senior judicial analyst, good friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, the thing that jumps out off the page, felony?
Yeah, felony means more than a year in jail. This is not like a traffic ticket. For standing and protesting, the type of thing that for 230 years Americans took for granted because it was protected by the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech has actually been abridged by legislation the president signed last Thursday, supported overwhelmingly by both, with very, very little public debate and very little debate in Congress. Basically allows Secret Service agents to decide where there are no free speech zones, not speech zones, no free speech zones. And anybody by the Secret Service can, protected by the Secret Service, can ask those agents to ban protests wherever they are. So I can think of 3 violations: speech violations, association violations, the right to petition the government for a redress of your grievances. What good is free speech if the people in the government are so far away from you that they can't hear you?
The third part of the First Amendment is freedom of the press. That means that the government cannot control the press and control what we hear or see or read. In fact, we can get our news or information from multiple sources. We can have a particular news channel that we like, or we can have a particular website that we like. And that news or that information from the free press, that means not under the thumb of the government, that we can get information freely from multiple sources, listen to what we want.
Well, in the past few weeks, the U.S. has witnessed an aggressive crackdown on whistleblowers. For many, the Obama administration's tough investigative stance on unauthorized press leaks goes against the president's own election promise to bring back openness and transparency. Moreover, some journalists now accuse the Obama government of actually attacking press freedom.
In an attempt to silence government leakers, the Obama administration is prosecuting a journalist. James Risen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning national security correspondent for the New York Times, is being told to give up his sources or go to jail. In his 2006 book, he wrote about the botched U.S. intelligence operations to halt Iran's nuclear program. As he's still under prosecutor's scrutiny, Risen is now advised to avoid interviews on the subject.
This issue has been litigated before. It went through the courts 2 years ago. A judge threw out the request for the subpoena. Now the Justice Department, under a new administration, ironically, seems to be going down the same path.
Eric Lichtblau, together with his colleague James Risen, has made a number of groundbreaking revelations, including the Bush administration's warrantless wiretapping program. He says confidentiality is vital in their work, as people often put their lives at risk to tell what's really going on behind the scene.
If, in effect, we have a system where journalists can only cover things that the government says are not secret, then journalists have lost their independence. They've lost their ability to act as a check on the government.
There would probably be no discussions on Guantanamo abuses or CIA's secret prisons if not for the leaks, but the clampdown is on.
Of course, there is a line between giving up national security secrets and telling the public what they need to know about their government's work. But one or two other cases like Risen's and the Free American Investigative Journalism could face a real drought in sources.
Obama's leak plugging has been welcomed most among advocates of secrecy in government affairs, but even they are surprised.
What came to me as a surprise, the Obama administration came into office pledging maximum openness in government, and while they've taken some steps in that direction, they've also done some unexpected things regarding leaks.
While some journalists have to fight for their sources, others demand transparency at the White House. Like Helen Thomas, who's been in the President Press Corps for over 50 years.
We have never had that in the White House. Too much secrecy in the White House and government. And I think the people have a right to know almost everything.
Meanwhile, Obama, with a new law tucked under his arm, positions the U.S. as the watchdog for the freedom of press in the world.
What this act does is it sends a strong message from the United States government and from the State Department that we are paying attention to how other governments are operating when it comes to the press.
One thing is not clear. Will the State Department pay attention to its own backyard as American journalists are being forced to break their word? Gainich Chakyan, RT, Washington, D.C.
1, 2, 3! Bradley Manning must be free!
Nearly 2 years in waiting, much of it in solitary confinement, and Private First Class Bradley Manning's trial is finally set to begin.
Free Bradley Manning! Free Bradley Manning!
Among the 22 charges filed against him, aiding the enemy, violating the Espionage Act, and illegally transferring classified data to an unauthorized source, WikiLeaks.
Come on, fire!
Part of that was this video showing U.S. Army pilots killing unarmed civilians, including 2 Reuters employees, a video that had been classified by the U.S. military. Though the Government Accountability Project's Jesselyn Radak said it never should have been.
You cannot go around classifying criminal activity. That is not proper classification. And I haven't heard a single person claim that what the collateral murder video showed was not war crimes.
A sentiment Manning seems to agree with. In an online chat conversation, he said he hoped his putting the information out there would prompt worldwide discussion, that he wants people to see the truth.
A short time later, Bradley Manning was arrested, in the process becoming one of the clearest symbols to date of a new set of standards, a system that now works against those who report wrongdoing and protects those doing the wrong.
And if we don't like what the press is saying, that we can write a letter to the editor and get that printed, or we can pass out leaflets or flyers, or we can create our own web page and state our ideas or our beliefs. We have the freedom under the First Amendment to freedom of all press, any form that we establish. The fourth part of the First Amendment is freedom of assembly. That means that groups of people can gather privately or publicly, share ideas. It can be a social group, it can be a political group, it can be a religious group, and the First Amendment allows them to assemble and share ideas. They can be for the government, they can be against the government, and the First Amendment grants their freedom to assemble. The fifth part of the First Amendment is the right to petition. That means that if we have grievances with our government, that we can send those grievances to them. We can have petitions put together. We can send emails. We can write letters. We can have our opinions known to our governors, to our presidents, to our judges, to the folks that run our country, we have the ability to petition them and explain what we like and what we don't like. And that freedom is established in the First Amendment.